Good day and welcome back to another DBZ Dokkan Battle video. In this video we're going to be taking on the Fighting Legend Frieza event and basically discussing a little bit about essentially how you can beat the event and also discuss some of the challenges you'll face during the event. Now the Fighting Legend Frieza event, honestly speaking, is pretty tough. It's not the toughest event. Honestly, I think it's realistically not super duper hard comparative to some of the red zones we've been getting. But it is definitely the hardest Fighting Legend Frieza event. Fighting Legend event, I should say, by quite some way. And, all things considered, it is also definitely a very challenging event that I think a lot of players are going to have to learn to deal with. So, with that being said, let's discuss a little bit, obviously, the actual challenges you face. Now, one big difference between the Frieza event and, say, the comparative event for Goku and Vegeta is there's no locking of evasion. So in those events, when you get to the final phase, whether it's against SS4 Goku or Vegeta or anything like that, there is no locking of evasion. So there is no there is a locking of evasion in those two events. This one, there's nothing. There's no locking, there's no shutdown, you can evade. The caveat to this is that the units or Frieza hits substantially harder. The thing is, with all of the buffs we've gotten since Worldwide Celebration and with some of the post-anniversary stuff, this event just doesn't really hit that hard. In reality, it doesn't even hit that hard in general, even without considering the after events and the 9th anniversary curve. It's just generally speaking a relatively held back event. And me, I personally find this fine. I don't really have an outward problem with this. I don't have an issue with this event. I don't have a problem with how it's constructed. I think for me, it being slightly easier than people anticipated is actually a good move for the game itself, because I think ultimately it is difficult when you constantly bring out super duper top level content all the time. So let's talk about the units and kind of how they do. You have the Tech Frieza in the first phase. You have the second form Frieza in the second phase. You have the Int Frieza third form. You then have the Strength final form Frieza. You then have the AGL full power Frieza. And then you also have the Int Golden Frieza, who is obviously technically the hardest hitting unit. I note that a lot of people tend to struggle with the AGL full power Frieza stage, and I think a lot of that is because of how his mechanics work. So he gives himself a sizable attack and defense buff when he fires off his super attack, and those first two turns he starts out really much stronger than he appears. After 2 turns he drops down in strength, which makes him realistically a lot easier to handle. Again, it's not anything that is super duper insane, but it is definitely something where you need to bring a decently solid team. I think for me it looks as a good event. I think they could have been slightly better, in terms of attack damage and things like that for a challenge. In Frieza, the final phase, he does raise his attack slightly, but realistically speaking, I think there's too much of a limitation on what they're hitting. Now, all that being said, talking about the event, let's talk about team. So it's a longer event, which is nice. I do think longer events are cool. We don't have a lot of them. It's been a while since we got an update to the Fighting Legend format, and I think we needed a new Fighting Legend event, especially a Fighting Legend one against extreme units. I think that's really, really important. And if we compare, like the Frieza's stats to the Vegeta's stats, there has been a bit of a jump up in terms of, the overall difficulty and like the overall level of damage that the units do. I think, with all that being said, like for me, definitely could have ramped up a bit. But this team that I'm using now is also a very good team. We have a really, really, really good level of units that we have here. Super Saiyan team functioning under 200% lead, 170% lead. A very strong team as well. I think overall a consistent team, a good team, a team that has good positional units. For example, we have AGL Super Saiyan Gohan, great stacking, second slot / eventual first slot unit. We have Trunks, who's very much the same. We're using a great free to play in the form of Trunks and Broly, which is really, really awesome. So yeah, we have a lot of really, really good stuff. So it's all looking good to me so far. I think Trunks and Broly do a great job as a floater. I think we have a very good kind of meshing between transforming Vegeta and AGL Gohan. Obviously, we have the transforming Trunks alongside the Super Saiyan Goku. You could reverse these and you would end up with a very similar net effect. So you're not losing anything with the way this is currently operating. So yeah, I think, looking comparatively of this event to the Fighting Legend Vegeta event, I think if you compare the stats, you're looking at like the first phase of Frieza, over double the health, stronger super attack. If you look at the second phase of Frieza, slightly weaker super attack, but it's AoE, more health, over double the health again. Frieza third form, over double the health again, stronger super attack. Frieza final form, double the health, stronger super attack. Frieza full power, double the health, stronger super attack. And then finally, Golden Frieza, double the health, stronger super attack. So all in all, this fight, comparative to whatever anyone might say, is definitely a step above the Fighting Legend Goku and Vegeta. I think the issue comes in that we've moved 3 steps ahead of that content. So although I do appreciate how they've constructed the content, and I don't believe everything should be the hardest stage in the game, I do think they have shortchanged themselves a little bit, because unless they start throwing out category missions for this straight away, players, or like lots of them, players aren't going to be, it's not hard enough as an event to, like a lot of the excitement from really hard events is not only beating them, but to see how units do in them. When they bring out a new event, seeing how the 5th year anniversaries do, seeing how the 1st year anniversaries do, the 3rd year anniversaries, seeing how the top LRs do, the top TURs, And I think you have to accept that is part of the gacha journey. And I think it's also very important that when they make events like this that aren't not even top of the line, but don't bring something specific to it, I think you have to kind of accept that it's going to go a little bit under the radar comparative to maybe what other people wanted to actually do. So yeah, I think ultimately looking at this event, it's a fun event, but it's not something that I would strictly say is setting a new meta. I think a lot of the units that do well in Red Zone will immediately translate to doing well here. And I think even though the event is longer, I think a lot of the times your damage will be high enough that you won't necessarily have an issue using shorter variants of units. For example, a unit like AGL Super Saiyan 3 Goku, Angel, the Majin Buu one. Traditionally, he should struggle in an event like this because there's so many phases that he should lose out on quite a bit of his buffs, of his damage reduction, of things like that. In this situation, he doesn't suffer that. Realistically speaking, he doesn't have like a huge issue. He will fall off only right at the end, and then probably be more than fine to still be a second star unit. So it's really there where you can see how the lack of lateral movement up in numbers has limited a bit of the event's effect on the meta. A great example is when the Fighting Legend Goku event first came out. That event was so hard and so different to what had come before that basically players exclusively built stacking teams. Like, players would go and build teams that could stack super duper high and would sacrifice damage and stack sometimes in the first 2 or 3 turns over and over and over and over and over again just to get enough defense to survive. Conversely, looking at things like ESPR. In ESPR, players came up with crazy strategies. For example, they would use double minus 40% attack buff leads for the whole team and beat events doing like 5,000 damage per unit. But as long as they couldn't die, and as long as they could do it in 2 hours, they would finish the event. And it's not that these defined the meta, but you'll find a lot of the times players will always try to work their way out of really hard situations. The most recent example is probably the Kid Buu event, whereby we've kind of got 2 ways of getting through that event without getting through that event. SS3 Goku with G-Lai items, spamming Ghost Dashes and Super Trunks abilities. There's a lot of stuff that really makes, like, that overall situation acceptable. Even though it comes from challenge, and technically speaking it may not or may be the way the game is intended to be played. But the thing is it creates like folklore, creates ways for these events to be handled, gives them a little bit of legacy. I just think the the Frieza event feels a little bit phoned in. The Vegeta one felt okay. It felt like just a variation of the GT Goku event, but the Frieza one definitely feels quite reduced in terms of like impact. The Fighting Name Vegeta event was already kind of like on the same par as Goku. The Frieza one is definitely the hardest one out of all of them, but inherently it's also probably the one I would say that's had the least impact on what people expect from units. Like I said, any unit that was doing good in Red Zone gonna do well here anyway. There's not gonna be a drop off or different requirements that are needed. So my team does fine. Stacking, guard, lots of stacking, lots of good performance against Wicked Bloodlines units. Overall, a very strong team performance and a very strong team. Taking on the Frieza event wasn't ever really considered something that would be tremendously challenging, but I do understand that maybe there was a bit of desync between the challenge requirements and what the actual event could provide. With that being said, this team was a lot of fun to use. Vegeta does some really cool damage, Trunks does some good damage, Trunks and Broly do some good damage, AGL Gohan kind of sits and does this thing. So all in all, it was a fun team. We'll obviously take a look at the missions and everything separately, but right now there are 2 missions each for the stage, which is really good. So we will take a look at that. I think it is important. But yeah, realistically speaking, I think looking at Golden Frieza, looking at the event, looking at how difficult everything is, I just think ultimately I'm having a pretty good time. Maybe in general there are moments that are not too great in this event, but that is it. We're going to use some of the active skills here, which is cool. Some skills we haven't seen in a while. Gonna get to see Trunks pop off. He's still not really fully built, which also just goes to show you how long they expect this fight to go, by the way. But yeah, realistically, it's a fun event, it's a good event, and ultimately it's a very prosperous event. because we've got everything we pretty much need. But there are some missions. I think right now it's for DB Seekers, and I also believe it is for DB Seekers and Pure Saints. So that's pretty cool. You can earn yourself some additional rewards there. There is still at least some nice equips and some nice stones from specifically, completing certain tasks as well. So here we are. We're going to finish off this event with the units. We'll finish things off, I think, next rotation with Vegeta with a full field of orbs, pretty much, which is really cool. One of his really cool abilities. And yeah, honestly, very, very, very good. I think ultimately at the end of the day, the event was a lot of fun. The team I used was fun. I'm looking forward to completing the missions, especially DB Seekers. But I think at the end of the day, that is almost, everything you need to factor in here. I just don't see there being anything else that's truly, mandatory to know or necessary to put in your team. I think things are so ordinary you won't even have to specifically change your team unless you specifically are going for the missions, which is what they want anyway. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like, and as always, I'll see you guys in the next one. Till then, take care, stay safe, and thanks for watching. Bye.